Welcome back to the Distressed Princess. I'm Rhonda. In today's episode, I'm going to repurpose all of this salvaged junk. Some of it is so cool. Some of it I knew what I wanted to do with it right away when I saw it, and some of it I had to really think about. But first, let me show you where I got these really cool pieces. I was doing some antiquing and junk store shopping when I came across this store I'd never been in called Home Again Architectural Finds. It's in Metropolis, Illinois, and it's near the Superman statue. So as I was walking by, this was the stuff that caught my attention outside of the store, and already it was so neat I couldn't even imagine what I had in store for me when I walked inside. It was very well organized with these different rooms that told you what was going to be in there, and this one had these really cool old columns. All of this stuff came from old historical homes, and you just can't find this sort of thing at Hobby Lobby. So all of this stuff, if you use your imagination, you can repurpose it into brand new creations, or you can even replace some of the existing things in your own house with these older, more unique pieces and make your home really, really neat. And now I know where to go to get the spindles to craft with. And oh my gosh, doors galore. This place had hundreds of doors. And how I want to so bad replace my laundry room door someday with one of these old doors. This place is definitely worth the visit if you're in the area of Metropolis, Illinois. And if you go, tell them that you were sent by the Distressed Princess. All right, now let's get to work on this stuff. This is one of those old vent grates that I got from the store I just showed you. And here is a piece of, I don't know if it belonged on the top of a column, if it was some sort of a molding or embellishment on a fireplace. I don't know, who knows? But it looked to me like it could attach to this grate and make a really cool shelf. So I brushed all the loose dirt off of the grate, and now I'm going to mix up a little concoction of paint. I wanted it to be white in color, but not stark white. So I'm mixing just a little dab of brown with my white chalk paint. Now, the most fun thing about repurposing things like this to me is that you don't have to worry about being perfection when you're painting. So this already has a lot of character. So it's got some rusty spots, it's got some chippiness to it. I do not want to completely cover all that good stuff up. I just want to brighten it up with some of this white paint and let some of those old chippy places and rusty places shine through. And I used the same color of brownish white paint to paint the brown places on this wooden piece. I didn't paint over the front where it was really nice and chipped up. Then I took a dry paper towel and wiped back off some of that white paint. Next, I had to engineer a way for this little ledge to set on this grate and be attached to make a shelf. So I rummaged around in my toolbox that contains lots and lots of little hardware pieces off of different projects and IKEA stuff and, you know, just things that you put together and they send you extra parts. Well, we had these little brackety type things. I don't even know what they were originally for, but they're not being used, and I'm sure they're not going to get used unless I use them. So I'm going to use them to attach this. They wound up being the perfect thing. So if you have anything like this laying around, know that you can use them for a purpose just like this. Then a little final touch. I decided I wanted to have more rusty looking spots than what was already on it. So I used my Waverly Antique Wax and a foam brush just to add in some little spots. Well, I bet you're wondering what it was that was sitting on the ledge I just made, and I'll show you how I made those little items. This is a table leg from that store, and the first thing I thought I needed to remove the little thing on the bottom, which was metal, because I want to be able to drill a hole in the center. So at first I tried to pull it out with these pliers, but it wouldn't budge. So then my next idea kicked in. I got out my handsaw and I just sawed off the very end. And then I sanded it so that it wouldn't look like a fresh cut. Sorry, I got a little out of frame here, but I just picked a medium-sized drill bit and drilled a hole right into the center, quite a bit of ways down, so that I could stick some flower stems down in there. And the other piece is an old garden hose nozzle. So I really liked the color that this was already, but since my little table leg piece was brown, I wanted this to be a contrasting color since it's going to sit on the ledge that I just made. So I decided to paint this up with some white chalk paint. But like I said in the first DIY, this is another reason why I just love doing this sort of stuff, because you don't have to be perfect with your painting. You get to really have fun and just glob it on in places and sporadically just stipple it on and let it take its own artistic form. I used these flowers from the Dollar Tree, and I really love how this whole entire project turned out. The next thing to get repurposed is this old glass light dome. And I also picked up this little white finial piece, and as luck would have it, I think it fit perfectly on top of this glass dome. So I cleaned both pieces up and used a little dab of E6000 to attach the finial to the top. Once it was dry, then I decided to put some string lights inside of it. And I think these are just cheap ones from the Dollar Tree. There's not very many lights, but it still looked really, really cute inside of this. Now for this giant candlestick. This was not a find at the architectural home place. This was at another junk store. So I don't think it's a piece off of a historical home or anything like that. It's just a great big giant candlestick. But it needed brightened up, so I'm going to add some white chalk paint. But again, you see this already has some really nice rustic looking spots on it. So I don't want to completely cover those up. So I used a really light hand with the paint. I didn't worry about covering up every speck of this yellowish color on this candlestick, because I wanted it to look layered and like it had been painted many times and chippy. And all you need is just a light little covering of some white chalk paint and splotchy little places. And boy, that just can do wonders. Watch the transformation. Now, what else can a giant candlestick be used for other than holding candles? Well, I had this farmhouse hook. It was a spare from a project in my house, and I decided I would turn this into a wreath holder. So I needed to figure out a way to attach this farmhouse hook. Since it wasn't going to sit flush on that round piece of the candlestick, I needed to bend it so that it would kind of curve around. So my first thought was to hammer it down, but I couldn't hold it steady enough to hammer and bend. So then I got my needle nose pliers, I grabbed hold of it, and that worked perfectly. I was able to bend each side of the attached piece so that it would kind of curve around and fit on the roundness of the candlestick. A little test fitting, and it works great. So then I marked the holes where I will need the screws to go, and I decided that I wasn't able to bend it enough and the little spot is not really big enough to put all 4 screws, so I'll only be using 2. I thought it would be easier to drill the screws in if I already had them a little screw hole started. So I tapped them into the wooden candlestick a little piece, and I think it really helped because it's really hard to drill stuff into a rounded thing. Then I added a wreath, and when I set it all up, I got an excellent idea. I put the light globe on top. I see these little oil cans around pretty often, and so I picked one up for a couple of bucks, and here's what I figured to do with it. I took a scrap piece of wood and I drilled a hole into the bottom of it so that it would fit down over that pointy part of the oil can, and so the oil can would serve as sort of a holder for this wood piece that I'm going to paint up and put a design on. First I had to pick my design, and I knew that I wanted a Highland cow, so I went to Creative Fabrica and I typed in Highland cow, and I came up with these really cute watercolor cows. I decided to print one out on tissue paper so that I could decoupage it onto the scrap piece of wood. So here's my tissue paper. I'm going to cut out one square of it. I try to pick out the least wrinkled one. Then tape the tissue paper to a regular piece of printer paper. And to make sure that it goes through your printer smoothly, make sure to tape down the entire top edge and the entire bottom edge. And here's the cow printed on the tissue paper. So the next step, if you have an inkjet printer, like I believe most of us do, then you'll need to seal that a little bit. And I like to use just some hairspray, a light misting, so that when you use the decoupage on the wood, your ink will not run. Now that we have the design all set to go, now I'm going to paint my little block of wood with one coat of white chalk paint. And then I sanded it for a smooth surface. Now I'm going to distress the edges using some Waverly antiquing wax and a foam brush. You'll want to use a pretty dry brush technique with this, so I'm wiping off most of that antique wax back into the jar, and then I'm going to swipe it inward from the outside in, making those distressed marks all around the front of the wood piece. Then I continued this distressing on all of the edges, on all of the sides of the block of wood. And on the back side, I continued some of those brown streaks down through the middle of the piece of wood so that it would look distressed on the back a little bit more than the front. Next, cut out your image, and instead of just leaving it in one block piece of tissue paper, I like to try to cut out close to the printed image. So I could have stood to get even just a little bit closer to the printed image, but anyway, just going around the tissue paper just like this. Then use your decoupage glue or your Mod Podge and apply that to the wood piece. Then apply your image, and you can easily smooth out any wrinkles with your brush with the Mod Podge or decoupage on it, or even with your finger. Then go over the whole piece with your Mod Podge or decoupage glue to seal it all in. There's a link in my description box for Creative Fabrica. They are running a special for $4.99 a month, unlimited graphics and fonts and designs. This piece is one of those chain locks, and it didn't have its chain with it, just this chippy white piece, and I liked it. So I looked around my house to think, what could I add this to? And I have this crate that you might remember I fixed up in a couple of videos ago, and I like the hook that was already on it, so I decided to add this little piece right underneath. The screws I had were blackhead screws, and they're actually a little big for this, but anyhow, I tried to camouflage them into the piece using some white chalk paint and some antiquing wax on those screws. And I think it gives even more personality to this cute little crate. The only thing left from my salvaged items were these scrolly pieces, and I really didn't have a great idea of what to do with them. So they're going to be saved for a future project, but I would love if you would tell me in the comments some ideas that you might have for them. Now let's take a look back at all the salvaged junk makeovers. Time for a cute cat video. I saw Piper lying in the sunshine and he was so cute. I was going to try to get a video of him, but then another cute thing happened. My precious little ducks were swimming across the pond, and my other precious little ducks wanted to walk on by. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to be off next week for a little spring break, but I'll be back the week after that to bring you more DIY and crafting fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.